Good evening, and welcome to the June 18th Public Works session of the Rockville Center Board of Education. Please rise for the pledge. Thank you. Mr. Gavin, Superintendent's report.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd first like to extend a warm welcome. We now have a new ex officio student officer. Her name is Callie Mann. She'll be joining the Board of Education. She was elected through the student government elections, which just recently took place at the high school. This new position is incredibly valuable as it provides students a voice directly to the board and offers a unique and essential perspective on issues that affect our students and our schools. And we look forward to her contributions and insights, and we look forward to bringing her in so they get a chance to get to meet the board either sometime this summer or early September. Next, I wanted to briefly discuss the communication that was sent to parents on June 9th regarding the new state policy banning personal internet-enabled devices during the school day, effective next September. This policy, mandated by a recently passed New York State budget, requires all school districts to adopt the policy, which is on one of the agendas tonight. Our Board of Education will be finalizing this policy to ensure that we are complying. And then there will be an additional communications over the summer to parents, also to provide additional resources about how to talk to students about weaning themselves off of their personal devices. And it's also important to reiterate, this is not just phones. This is all personal internet devices such as phones, smartwatches, AirPods, headphones, and personal laptops. Starting in September, only district-issued Chromebooks will be permitted for internet use access for school work. We understand that this is a significant change, and we are committed to a smooth transition. Our middle school and high school administrators have already begun engaging students and staff regarding the potential of these new rules and how it could play out, and more detailed guidance will be shared at several points during the summer and prior to school reopening. Parents can continue to reach students. Like, some parents had questions about how they could reach students. We still have phones in the schools where if the student needed to make a conversation, come home and call a parent, we have phones where that can happen. And we also have the main office where they could reach. And there's also our student email, which you can always send your student an email as well. Please be aware that we will need to amend our acceptable use policy over the summer. So that's some work that we're going to have to take a look at in terms of acceptable use, just to define what a personal internet device is and how that can be used in schools or not used in schools for bell-to-bell. Also, interestingly enough, today in the New York Times, there was an article written about by Jonathan Haidt, who wrote The Anxious Generation, where a lot of this movement came from. It is a very interesting article, and it talks about a survey of recent young Gen Z adults and teenagers, where it's clear from the results of the survey that there are profound feelings of regret in getting access to phones and social media too early in life. I thought that was a very interesting finding. I know that the PTA has been working, there's a movement in town called Wait Till 8, meaning like wait till 8th grade before you give your children a device for social media, an internet-enabled device for social media. So I just thought that was interesting for anyone out there. If you want to read that article, it's got some very interesting points in there. Also, as we approach the final week of school, I want to remind everyone that we could, even though it seems to rain every day this last week, we could experience some hot weather. Please be assured that we have air-conditioned spaces available for students during exams and other end-of-year events to ensure their comfort as best as possible. And next week is a special time for many of our students and families. We have our elementary moving up ceremonies aplenty, all 5, and then our exciting high school and middle school graduations. These are wonderful milestones, and we get to see our students at their very best. As we wrap up the year, I want to thank all of our teachers, support staff, custodians, security guards, and our administrators for their hard work this year to create great opportunities for our students. Every day I get to see how hard our district works, and every day I'm more and more impressed by the people and proud of the people to be a part of that work. Thank you to our parents and community for their continued support, and to our school community, parents, teachers, staff, and especially our students, I wish you all a restful and enjoyable summer filled with family and friends.
Thank you. Turning to the public works session, we have a presentation this evening on our strategic plan.
Yep. No problem. Tonight, we're going to present on the strategic plan for the board. We'll talk a little bit about the process that we've gone through for the course of this year, and then we'll talk generally about what some of the recommendations are, and then with the board questions and approval, the entire plan will be placed up on our website, and it'll be the focus of our work for next year and the next 3 years. So, starting out, I just wanted to talk about and thank the members of our strategic planning team. All of them are listed here. We have administrators, we have parents, we have PTA members, we have teachers, we have a board member, Dr. Downing, was also on the strategic planning committee. All of these people dedicated their time. There was no compensation for any of this work, so everyone dedicated their time to talk about the important work that we want to do over the next 3 years. So how did this begin? Well, it started during the board retreat last year in July. So a year ago in July, we were talking about the idea of a strategic plan, what that would look like, how it could guide the work that we do. So we've talked about it twice as a board and a superintendent and central office group, not only in July 2024 of last year, but we also talked about it this year in January during our mid-year retreat. So the board knows, the strategic planning committee met a total of 24 times from October through May. There were large group meetings that were held every month, and then smaller committee meetings based on our strategic priorities that were held once a month as well. Between meetings, central office administrators, and I have to thank all of the people to my right, worked to make sure if there were meeting agendas that needed to be put in place, if there were follow-up tasks that needed to be done, if there was language that needed to be cleaned up. All of those things happened in between those meetings, which basically happened every other week. When we got to, so central office people could have been at 4 meetings a month. So all of our team did a great job this year working on that, each getting a different dedicated area to focus on, and I think that really helped. And that work was a lot of collaboration and discussion. If I remind the board, back in January, we talked about the new mission and the new vision and all of the value statements that I'm going to run through, and that was also based on some of the work that we've done prior to that. So why are we doing this? Why do we do what we do? First and foremost, we wanted to review the mission of the district. Is it still is it still an important mission? Is it a mission that puts our students in a good place, and it directs our work well for teachers? We wanted to look at that as well. We wanted to create a structure for decision-making. I think that's the most important thing. As we start to think as a board and as a superintendent, does this fit into our strategic plan or doesn't it, as we consider it? We know we have finite resources. One of the areas that we're talking about this as part of our strategic plan is how do we manage ourselves in fiscally difficult times? So one of the great outcomes of this is that we now say, is this something that we agree to as part of the strategic plan or not? If it's not, that might be okay, but how does it fit in? So that really helps us create a structure for decision. This also aligns the goals of the board with the work of the district, and it does it very concretely over 3 years. So for the last 3 years, the board has done a great job coming up with goals, and we've given you deliverables based on those goals. This is how we're doing that work. This now brings us down to a much more granular level because it allows us to do a couple things. Number one, once that strategic plan is approved and it's up on the website, everyone gets to see what the steps are over the next 3 years. That's first. Okay? Number two, when I meet with our administrative team during our administrative retreat in July, the things we talk about is, let's talk about year one. What are the goals that you're going to actualize this year? Let's talk about that work. And then when I meet, say, with principals, I meet with them once a month, or directors once a week. I talk about the work with them, and we talk about the work with them on how they are actualizing those goals. So this really allows the goals of the board, which I think are outstanding goals and are reflective in our strategic priorities. They allow us to really concentrate that work and deliver it on a day-to-day basis with everyone. It also allows us to translate the work of the board to the teachers and the teachers' everyday work. And I think that, to me, is a key thing. It also allows us to engage our community members in discussions about the future of the district. And that, going back to this slide really quick, we have community members that are not only parents, but we have community members that are teachers and administrators as well. So widening out that conversation about where we want to go and how we want to get there, I think is super, super important. Did I drop money or did you, John? I don't think I've had change in quite a while. So it all begins with values. So last year, we did a value survey where we sent out a survey to all of our community members, teachers, parents, and students about the values that were important to them. So in that value survey, they came back with values that the Rockville Center School District believes are important. We took those values and we tried to make statements about we tried to turn them into positive statements that we could refer to as we make our decisions. So for example, one of the most popular values was the idea of our students achieving excellence. There was no doubt that was the number one most important value. You can see right away that we turned that into a value statement where we're trying to inspire excellence. Creativity was another value that the community came back and said, this is important for us, that our students are creative, that they have character and resilience, that we empower student voice, and that we foster inclusivity. And this I thought was one of the most interesting, the idea of service. This came back from the community. It speaks volumes about who our community members are and our survey respondents are, because the idea that you give to something bigger than yourself, or that you contribute to organizations outside of the one that holds you captive every day for 6.5 hours or 7 hours, I think is very, very important. So these value statements will be ways that we can communicate effectively, strategically, and collaboratively with our teachers, with our parents, and we can make our decisions helping using these values as well. Our new mission statement is our purpose. So the mission is our purpose. We'll talk a little bit about the vision, which is more aspirational, about what we aspire to. But every day when we come to work, and this is work that we now have to do once the board adopts it, next year will be a conversation with all of our teachers and building administrators about how we translate this work and how we exemplify this mission. Our new mission statement talks about cultivating a learning environment where creativity thrives and character is strengthened, and innovative learning experience prepare students to strive for excellence, act with integrity and empathy, and lead with imagination and purpose. The thing that we've discussed even as a board and superintendent during the retreat was the idea of leadership. I think that was really important that we included that, and we closed with the idea of leadership. Rockville Center historically has been a place where we create leaders each and every day. And I think that it's important that that is embedded into our mission each and every day, and our teachers and our administrators understand that. The vision statement is our aspiration, right? This is what we want to do all the time, and it's not always possible to get there right now, but it's something that we aspire to. So the Rockville Center Public School District envisions an inclusive learning environment, inclusive learning community where every student discovers their unique potential and emerges as a confident, creative, and principled individual, prepared to excel and evolve in an evolving world. I think the key piece there is the idea of evolving. The world is changing very rapidly. I mean, if you've been reading the news lately, the impact of like artificial intelligence on jobs, college graduates, is going to force us to think differently about the work we do in the K-12 space, not just at the university or pre-vocational kind of spaces. So I think that's a key piece in terms of our aspiration, is that we have to not only make sure that we're innovative, but that we are evolving to meet the needs and the demands of what society is going to want from our graduates. So for us, that's the vision statement. This is exactly where the board goals come into play. So our priorities, our board goals have turned into our strategic priorities. So starting in July, we talked about the idea of enhancing student outcomes and opportunities. That covers a wide range of what we do on a day-to-day basis. That could be something like it could be a new course, it could be a new club, it could be how do we improve student performance on a particular test, it could be how do we improve student performance in terms of outcome, in terms of graduation numbers, whatever that is, those are the outcomes and opportunities, which covers, quite honestly, for most people, the vast majority of our day-to-day operations. Financial and budgetary oversight, this was a priority of the board since day one, is that we are respectful of our taxpayer. That we try to put together programs that are respectful, stays within the tax cap, that we manage our resources well, and that in a year where costs are increasing, and homeowners all across Rockville Center know this, homeowners are increasing without your control, we're gonna have to manage that and be transparent about the decisions we make. And then finally, we wanted to talk about expanding community partnerships. Again, this came from the idea of service. This came from that value survey where people came to us and said, hey, by the way, we think it's important that our students get into the community, that our students have the opportunity to show who they are. Because we know, and we've seen this all personally firsthand, when our kids go into the community, they do a fantastic job, right? Whether it's Love Nana, right, which just recently happened at Yankee Stadium, or it was the baby clothing drive my first year, where we had like 3 tons of baby clothes for Love Nana, or it's our partnerships with Malloy, or our partnerships with Hofstra, where we're having new opportunities for our students as well. those are all examples of community partnerships or community-based organizational partnerships that I think are important, and that we now have a 3-year plan on how to strengthen that. One thing that came back over and over again, and I'll talk about this a little bit more when we talk about each one of these areas, was the idea of expanding our incredible alumni network. So we have highly successful people that have graduated Southside High School, and that we have to really start levering that up so that we can expand not only partnerships, but then go back to enhancing student outcomes and opportunities. Finally, the last thing that we'll talk about today is how we can measure success. What are the things that we're going to talk about in terms of measuring success? How are we going to communicate all this work to the community, and have discussions as a board of education and the superintendent? Are we delivering the things that we're asking to do? And if not, why? So that's there. So let's talk a little bit about outcomes and opportunities. And what I didn't do here is give you the entire grid. So there's an entire grid that the board has that will be up on our website that I will show in a second, Mary Lou. Not just yet, but Mary Lou's gonna pull up the planning grid that will drive the work of what we do. But here are some examples of things that would come under enhancing outcomes and opportunities. Curriculum. We're doing comprehensive audits and revisions to make sure that we're aligned to New York State standards and the Blue Ribbon Commission's work, and that we are reflecting student voice and choice. Instruction and professional learning. How are we aligning our instructions with inquiry-based learning, conceptual understanding, and real-world applications? That, again, that goes back to the Blue Ribbon, but it also is aligned with New York State standards. And how are we providing ongoing professional learning and professional development opportunities? And then finally, here's, I think, one of the most exciting things that we have to talk about, and this was a lot of work that we talked about during the strategic planning, is what is assessment going to look like? How are we going to refine our assessment practices? How are we going, if regents are going to meet somewhat less, what are the things that we can develop that would mean more, that would show authentic opportunities for our kids to accelerate student growth and provide feedback in a quick, authentic way so students can learn and grow from that. Fostering increased community engagement and partnerships. Again, this talks about getting our students into the community, just as I spoke about before. Again, the alumni network development. We've already started some of this work. So in kindergarten, when we ask for pre-K registration and kindergarten registration, we ask, are you a Southside alumni? Southside alumni. If you are you willing to add your email to the database? So we've already got, one of the funniest things was like, I'm not, but you can add my email. Like, we got some of those things back in the form. But the idea of growing that network, of using the people that have come through here and are willing to give back, I think is super important. Partnerships, like I talked about before, establishing and growing alliances with external organizations, whether that is a college or a university setting, whether that is getting work-based experiences for our students, that as the state comes back and says, hey, by the way, here's how internships can count now for credit, we need to be prepared for that, and we need to have the people to go to provide the best opportunities for our kids. And then, of course, career-based learning as well, which again is expanding student horizon by providing direct access to either vocational or trade opportunities through explorations, hands-on experiences, and sometimes, industry connections. So I just had a meeting today at the middle school. They're very interested in adding, as part of the robotics group, robotics course, they're interested in adding a component on drones. So we talked about expanding how we could work with kids actually building and designing what a drone would look like, and then ultimately flying this drone. The cool part about that, I only mentioned that here, is not because it was cool and I was like, yes, let's go. But it was more about the fact that there are partnerships with industries that can develop as a result of this, including the fact of them sponsoring the materials. So we've already taken that next step. Guy Accardi and I are meeting with a company that helps put us in place with community partnerships, again, to expand that in community engagement and partnership so that our kids get a cool opportunity to learn something new in terms of the design process in the robotics class. And then financial and budgetary oversight. This is something that we've been doing for a long time, so we wanted to codify that in our strategic plan. These are things that we do. We do it regularly, we do it often, and we do it in a way that invites the community to be part of the budget process. So transparent budgeting, providing user-friendly budget communications through the district website, newsletters, and social media. Long-range financial planning, developing a 5-year financial plan, including reserve and fund balance plan to reduce the reliance on appropriated funds. Financial efficacy and taxpayer burden, maintaining the tax levy within the state-imposed cap, and then making sure that we have financial efficiency through interdistrict and BOCES collaboration. And then, of course, continuing our political outreach, which the board and I do regularly each year, to make sure that our local legislators and our state legislators understand the demands that we have and how ultimately the state budget process impacts those demands. And then finally, long-term facilities and capital planning. The board may have noticed that last meeting, Patrick McGuire talked about a number of potential facilities upgrades, but that comes here. How does that look in a 5-year capital plan? What does that look like in terms of the taxpayer burden? How does that play? Yes, we'd all love to have all of the things that Patrick talked about as possibilities. Same thing with Katie Mark when she talked about upgrading our art music facilities. We'd love to do that. How can we do that in a way that doesn't impact the taxpayer and give them an undue burden? So those are all part of our financial and budgetary oversight components. And then how do we measure success? Well, we're going to have regular public updates to the Board of Education. That's something that we've been doing since I got here. So once we establish the goals, we talk about what those deliverables for those goals are, which are now in the format of the planning grid. And then how do we present those things to the public about our work towards it? And knowing that there are going to be some times where we're like, you know what, we planned this 3 years ago and it's not feasible now. And then still having that transparent discussion. The other component will be updates through district publications. So we do an update each and every quarter on the things that happen in your schools. So your schools is another opportunity for us to update the public on strategic planning. And then how do we translate action plans and administrative goals to all of our administrators? So that starts here in cabinet, where we talk about each of the different components and what their areas of oversight will be. And then that translates down to building principals, directors, assistant principals, and then ultimately teams of teachers that will be doing the work. And then finally, how do we gain feedback on our plan and on the steps that we're taking? We've been really good with utilizing surveys and focus groups here to listen to student voices through both surveys and focus groups, but also with parents and listening to community members as well. These are, the strategic plan will have built-in opportunities for that as well, about how we are going to make sure that the board knows and the community knows, are we meeting the strategic plan or not? So those are the ways that we would measure success. In terms of like outcomes and opportunities, we already do data presentations from each level, from the elementary, middle, and high school. We've been doing that for the last 3 years. That would be another one of those things that we already have built. That would be a measure of success that we could do in terms of outcomes and opportunities. And, Mary Lou, how do I get back to that thing? All right, thank you. So I don't want to go into the nitty-gritty, first of all, because I can't read it. And then second of all, because it's really far from me. And second of all, because it is pretty detailed. So if the board takes a look, there are 3 different tabs, all based on our strategic priority areas, that have been outlined through that strategic planning group. So community partnerships is one tab, and if you clicked on the community partnerships, you'd see all of the steps we're going to take for community partnerships. Financial and budgetary oversight, the same thing. Thank you. And then over for outcomes and opportunities. These are, if you scroll down a little bit, Mary Lou, sorry. These are all of the different areas that we will be working on, and we laid out with all of the different subcommittees how it would look over 3 years. So this is basically the meat of what we want to do. These are the action steps. These are the broad areas that will require more finite actions to meet those. So this, again, turns into our work each year, and it starts with the administrative retreat on the 7th and 8th, or 8th and 9th of July, where we'll be talking with our administrators about how this work will translate to their work. So I just wanted to show this. If we adopt this strategic plan tonight and we're all good, then what will happen is this will get posted on our website, and then that will direct our work. And again, when we meet for our retreat this summer, we do have to talk about that. When we meet for our retreat this summer, this will be part of the work as well, where we get a chance to take a deep dive in some more of these areas. Questions?
Good. Thank you. Comments or questions from board members?
I would just echo the thanks that you started with to everyone who was involved, particularly everyone who is up here on this dais for running the small groups, coordinating and managing a lot of sometimes complex and difficult conversations, leading small groups. I know I learned a lot from each of the committee members who came to both the large group and the small group meetings, and it was a really nice way for some of our new administrators to work together on a common goal and to get to know each other. And so I really just want to thank you for compiling. I know this was a team effort to compile a lot of various conversations into a coherent document that then can be not necessarily an ending of one process, but the beginning of another, where we can look to the built-in accountability measures that are in the grid and throughout the narrative, and really make sure that as things evolve, as funding changes, as the Blue Ribbon Commission gives us more detail, we are in a good position to absorb change and make sure that our action steps are in accordance with our community's values, as you've indicated in this report. So I just wanted to thank everyone for all of your time, and to thank all of the teachers, parents, administrators who made time. You don't have time, you made time at the end of a long, busy day to come to these extra strategy sessions, and they really were energetic and energizing, and really put us, again, in a very good position to handle what's coming next.
I'll echo my thanks. This has obviously been a labor of love. And probably some of the most exciting parts about teaching is getting to sit and talk about what the future could be, or what you wish you could change or bring, but in the day-to-day of getting through the classes you're teaching and all of the job responsibilities, it's hard to take moments to think about those things. So I really like the fact that we're deliberately looking at what we do and trying to make decisions about where we're going in a very deliberate way. Just a couple of quick comments. I really appreciate the alumni aspect. I think that's a hugely untapped resource, and not even just alumni, but community members have, you just talked about drones. A friend of mine is working for a company that's using drones to deliver medicine to remote places in Africa. So there's real life applications, and people who live in town. I would love to continue building that network, so I appreciate that being in there. I also really appreciated the grid of planned action steps. I think that was my biggest question, is what are the concrete things coming next? So it's nice to see that it's all very well outlined. And then my only other comment would just be in garnering feedback, I think it's really important to give teachers a mechanism to give formalized feedback, because they're the ones who are living it day to day and have the most real-time knowledge of how things are working and what we need and how kids are adapting. So I think we need to build that in as well. But thank you to everybody who put all their time into this. It's much appreciated.
Yes, I have to echo the thanks as well. 24 meetings. When I saw that, I didn't realize it was that many. So thank you for all the extra time, Dr. Downing being our board rep, and all the teachers and parents and our administrators for that. Thank you. And I think it's in line with what every great academic institution does, is create strategic plans. I mean, this is what our colleges and universities do. And this is how we've been priding ourselves in this district, is setting ourselves and our students up for success in the future. So I think it's really important that we have this. I like it for our leadership. We've had an amazing cabinet built here, and I think it's an opportunity for you all to put your own stamp on these different areas. So I think in process, it's a great thing for this district. It shows a real outlook, and I think it's for people to look back to time and again, and for us to be accountable and, decide when things need tweaking or changing as we move forward. So I think all of it in that is great. One thing that stood out to me in the mission and the vision is the definition of the word creativity and being creative. So I would challenge with just thinking about the whole year, and getting when Mr. Gavin came on and he said game on RVC in our first introduction, that caught fire here. The culture was hungry for something to be part of. And I would really love for our community and our students to feel part of the new mission and the vision. So when I think about the AI presentation and the prompting, I wonder what our students could do with these words and what they could create from it. So could they create some sort of imagery or logo or something that kind of accompanies this, that's student-driven? Because I would love for the start of the 25-26 school year for this to not just be words on a website or on the back of a calendar, or, just words that people read, but that students understand what our pledge to them is, and that they understand it and they are challenged by it and they are excited by it. Because I loved the word ignite, that was somewhere in here.
Yeah, value statement.
Yeah, I thought that that was such a great word because that's what you want to do for young people is just light them
I
up.
believe that was a Dr. Downing special. the
Well,
way they
Dr.
used it.
Downing, well done. I'm not surprised. I think it's a great word. And so I would love to challenge our students to really buy into this and give them some way to feel connected to it.
I
So
love that idea.
That's
Thank
my
you.
idea. Thank you.
Thank you, especially to all of the members of the Strategic Planning Committee. I really appreciate the work that was done in putting this plan together. I'm interested to see the matrix a little bit closer and to really be able to dive in and see what is spelled out there. I think that will be interesting and excited to see how the mission is also woven into those steps year by year. You know,
I couldn't hear you, so I didn't know if
Oh, sorry. I mean, just overall, just a lot of thanks. I mean, the job as a school district is for impact, right? How are we impacting kids? How are we helping kids to grow? How are we connecting kids to community and community back to kids? And I think this strategic plan has all those elements in it. So again, just really excited to look at that matrix a bit more closely and see how it plays out. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for all your work on this. We look forward to getting updates as we continue down this path.
Great.
Turning to policies, stage 1, we have 5685, max temp for buildings and facilities.
Yeah, so this is a new requirement that we had to adopt a policy for. I did have actually one question, just generally speaking. So one of the new requirements is that if the temperatures go above 88 degrees, then there needs to be certain steps taken, either moving students to cooler areas or closing early. So I just wanted to know, do we have spaces in every building that we can move kids to should the
Yes.
need arise? Okay. And obviously, we already have procedures for early closures and things in place, but, so that was it for me on this.
Thank you. Okay, to
As
move,
long as everything's working, we're in
Well,
good shape
correct.
with this one. So as long as we don't have a power outage and 95 degrees, we should be in good shape. I'm gonna knock wood right now.
okay, to move
Yeah.
this? Okay, and then we have 7317, student use of cell phones and other electronic devices to be renamed use of internet-enabled devices during the school day.
Right, so this is the significant change, the significant policy change from the New York State budget that Mr. Gavin was referencing earlier at the start of our meeting. So you can see we now start with pursuant to New York State law. This is how we have developed this, and it's important, I think, for everyone to take note of the bell-to-bell nature of this regulation, that this includes all instructional and non-instructional periods, homeroom, lunch, recess, study hall, and passing time in the hallways. So no devices, no phones, and as you mentioned earlier, internet-enabled devices also include watches, right? Anything that enables someone to connect to the internet, and it is all day. And there are some exceptions carved out, as you can see, but by and large, this is a wholesale ban, and it does also include other laptops that are not district supplied. Some methods for parents to contact students, as you indicated earlier, are listed on page 2 of the policy, going back to the old school ways of calling the office or emailing, or the classroom intercom system, writing pen and paper notes. So I think we need to continue to have discussions about this. We'll continue to stage this policy as we do for opportunities for public comment. And I think it's also interesting to see towards the end that we are also required to compile data and accounting of our success in some regard about how the implementation and enforcement of this policy takes shape in our buildings.
I think more just questions as we're starting to live it. What we had talked about when we met before, the policy committee met before tonight, was that it is likely that it's going to be an evolving process. So we have the policy, but then as we see how it rolls out in practice, we will likely have to address, unforeseen things or make adjustments. The policy is the policy, but make adjustments in terms of the real-life application of it. I also Mr. Gavin, you had mentioned earlier that parents could email students, but correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think outside addresses can email the Rockville a student account. So,
Let me just double check that, but that's what I was told by Scott, but I'll double check.
okay, because I think usually that, or maybe it's changed, but in the
Okay.
past, it gets bounced back. And, it's important, I appreciate that you outlined how the communications will be rolled out. I think it's really important for people who, inevitably, there will be people who are only start paying attention in September. So the more we can do to get the word out, the better.
Okay?
Just had a quick question about the on-site storage. So I know it mentions, a few options for like what that looks like. Are we doing anything differently? We're not providing, like you've seen it on television, those little pods for
The Yonder
phones. So just so
pouches? Yeah.
people know what this actually looks like in real time,
So
we're not changing anything.
we have lockers.
Right.
So lockers are an acceptable use according to the policy for a place for students to store their phones. So we're not using a couple things. There are some districts that use, like, you have to walk into every
Yep.
class, but they're not really supposed to be using the phones in the hallways anyway. So as long as they are in their lockers, starting at the beginning of the day, that's the storage device. I'm also very hesitant to do some of like the pouches that they talk about. There's a company called Yonder, which was coincidentally a sponsor of this bill. Go figure. And they sell a $40 pouch that if you go on YouTube for about 3 seconds, you can figure out how to beat. So the pouch, ostensibly, you put the phone in the pouch, and there's a magnet that locks the pouch. And then the kids can carry their phone, but they may not be able to use it. But our kids are very, very
Savvy.
creative.
Yeah.
You like that word, creative,
Yeah,
right?
creative, right.
They're very, very creative, and I have seen places, like, if you even go to a comedy club, they'll ask you to do the kind of the same thing, where you have to, give your phone in so that you're not recording the performance. But people have been known to give dummy phones and keep their actual phone on them. People have been known to use a magnet to defeat the Yonder pouch, and then they use it, and you have little or no way to see them using it in that case. So we feel that the locker is an appropriate way. Most of the other districts that we've spoken with are going with lockers at this point. Very few have already gone out and said, like, I'm gonna designate a room with 3 people and store $1.5 million of phones every day. That's not something I would recommend. I think it's best, each student gets their own locker, each student gets their own combination. Now, at the high school, occasionally they forget where their locker is, because they carry a lot of their stuff with them. So that's gonna be a change. That's gonna be one of the things that are going to require some implementation.
But then I guess I would just challenge that not only 6th grade plus kids in our district are carrying phones.
Correct.
So I would just want to make sure that the elementary students, especially those that are 2nd, 3rd, 4th children, might be getting them younger, and they don't have lockers. So, it's probably, I think that there just needs to be spelled out for parents that we are not doing the room that's
Yep.
locked up with the phones, because if kids don't have a locked locker in the 5th grade, but they bring a phone to school and something happens to it, I think it would just be good to make sure that we don't only look at this as a middle school plus
Yep.
change, because we do have young kids
I
too.
think our biggest issue at the younger grades are not actually the phones, it's the watches.
Watches, yeah.
So the watches seem to be the issue. So that requires communication from the building principals and the PTAs about how this would look. And that they really, at this point, you just don't send it. Like, don't send the phone, don't send the watch or the personal laptop. It's much, much easier. Now, for high school and middle school students, is it practical for them not to bring it ever? Especially if they're staying for an after school and they might need a ride or something along those lines. It's probably not as practical, which is why you have to have the locker as a storage device.
I just have one question on page 2, where it says students must be permitted to use an internet-enabled device. where the use is included in a student's IEP or 504 plan. So my question is, throughout our annual reviews this spring, have we been having those conversations with parents? Are IEPs updated, 504s updated as needed so that children who need their phone have it?
So most of the time for a 504, if they're, I'm just gonna use if somebody is a diabetic, for example, and that's how they can monitor their blood sugar intake. That would be something that would be on a 504 as a medical device. If it's a medical assisted device or a assistive technology device that's on the IP, that counts and is exempted from this policy.
Yeah, I think I'm thinking more of like a child who has like severe anxiety, where that might not have been on their 504 because there was never a policy about this. Again, the case would be rare, but for those kids where this is not assistive tech, but might be necessary, that we've had those conversations, and if not, that we're reaching out to those parents to make sure that the IEPs and 504s reflect what the kids really need.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay to move this? Currently at stage 3, we have 5422, use of credit cards. Okay to move this for approval?
Yep.
5511, fund balance and reserves. Okay to move this as well?
Yes.
And 5640, smoking, tobacco use, renaming, prohibition of smoking and vaping. Okay to move this to approval
Yep.
at the next meeting. Can I have a motion to approve items F1 through H18?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And then we have an addendum to the agenda this evening, number 19, an item for action regarding zoning appeal resolution, that the 2 zoning appeals have been upheld. Can I have a motion to approve that?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Before we return to exec, Mr. Murphy? Congrats on your last board meeting. We're gonna miss you, John. Can I have a motion? You're not getting rid of
Can
us
we have
yet.
a
We have to go
motion?
to exec now. Can I have a motion to return to exec session to discuss the employment history of a particular person?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening. Happy summer.